up dancing. Wake up. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Harv Roman's gonna make you dance. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up dancing. Wake up, Harv Roman's gonna make you dance.
That's me from Chicago to the world, bringing to you another exciting Chicago Celebrity Hotline conversation. This time around, specifically for YouTube, we're going to have the full-length interview up on Mixcloud. We'll also plan on sending it over to our 1590 affiliate WCGO radio here in Chicago. But very exciting things are about to happen to your radio or your computer or your iPod or whatever you happen to be listening to right now. So many cool ways to listen to radio these days. And now it's going to be even more exciting because we have a Chicago Celebrity Hotline conversation with someone you should know. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Christina De Leon. Oh, this is so cool to talk to you because it's been a while since it's kind of interesting because we've been buddies on social media for I don't know how many years now, and we've kind of tap danced around doing an interview, and with your schedule, which is busy, which is a good thing. So when you're an actress, you need to be busy. We haven't been able to get it done, and now on a Saturday morning we are getting it done. So I do appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us for a little while.
Thank you. I appreciate you having the interest to interview me.
Well, why not? You are one of those fierce Chicago Latinas that are starting to take over the world. When you start looking around at the kids that came out of the Humboldt Parks and the Logan Squares and the little villages of Chicago that are having their impact in New York and LA and in Florida, it is a pretty good time to be somebody from Chicago. Are they hunting you guys down now because you're Chicago and because of people like you and Gina, or is it just a coincidence?
I think it's just a coincidence. I think that the temperature and the climate of the country is everybody's looking for more diversity, and who better than to make things diverse than Puerto Rican women?
Well, I agree, but once upon a time, my background with, radio and the Boys and Girls Clubs and whatnot, I had always gravitated towards interviewing, Latinos from Chicago and beyond, and in particular, a lot of the comics that have come through town and are from town. And Hollywood is one of those strange things that it used to be, and hopefully it's not anymore. Like if they've got one George Lopez show, they figure, well, we already have a Latino comedy show, so we don't need another one. And then they'll adopt somebody else for a little while, so they go from Freddie Prinze to George Lopez, and then they don't discover very many other people. It seems like Latinos had been discovered only one at a time until recently.
Right, and even now, some people feel that it's still a hurdle to overcome. I see a lot of diversity, like in Jennifer Lopez's new series, Shades of Blue. She has a white person, a black person, Latinos, Asian. There's a little bit of everybody in there, and I think it's important to show diversity in shows. I executive produce a web series called Mom's, a brand new series, and we're trying to make it into a television series. And one of the things for us is that we feel that it's important to show women of color in the same light as everybody else. It doesn't always have to be like the cha-cha girl who plays the Puerto Rican, or a maid, or those kind of roles, or an African American playing a slave, or a ghetto person, or it's just that we're so much more than that. And it's just in Hollywood, I think, a little bit to catch up. But I think they're there now.
It's funny because a lot of the words that you're saying, if you went back to my 1992 interviews with people like George Lopez and John Leguizamo, those were the things they were saying they wanted to defeat back then. The stereotypical roles. I don't want to be a terrorist. I don't want to be a waiter. I don't want to be the guy that takes the car around in front for somebody else to get into. And through the hard work of people like you and people like them, now it's to the point where, and I used to tell my son, I said, Latinos are the new cool thing now. You got to have a Latino, where once upon a time, there were other ethnicities and other stereotypes that they would work into shows, but then they would give them like such a stereotype that it really wasn't representing us well.
Right. I caught those flags in Chicago Boricua within the community. I remember when Chicago Boricua came out, not everybody embraced it in the same way. I had a different perspective. I grew up in Humboldt Park, the daughter of two police officers. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. I went to private school, but I was raised in the hood, and I went to the field house, and I went to gymnastics at the field house. And by the time I was 15, I was really interacting a lot with a lot of the local neighborhood, some of the people that weren't on the same track as I had originally been on. So I kind of seen both sides of it. I had a lot of friends that are in prison for life and that are no longer with us. And unfortunately, that's the reality of our community.
Let me ask you
There
this.
are
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
people that graduate and go to college and go on to have better lives, but those are further and fewer in between, And there are a lot of, I have people that I grew up with in church who are police officers now, or lawyers, or business people. And so it's just that because of the way the community was and is, and the way the temperature of the world is, you have to sometimes tell the hard stories that nobody wants to hear. Yeah, nobody might want to see a movie about a white girl pretending to be Puerto Rican who wants to be the queen of the Puerto Rican parade and who's going through an identity crisis, or nobody wants to see Amy Garcia smoking pot with, the local drug dealer, and, just the different ways that it shed light on the community. But in reality, those are real issues there, and there actually are harder issues in the community that nobody wants.
It's interesting that you say all that, and I didn't know we'd go into that, but when I watched the movie for the first time years ago, I couldn't wait to get a copy of it, and what I was seeing the flags, I was seeing the Puerto Rican house, I was seeing Division Street, I was seeing people that looked like us, and I says, this is great. Yeah, there was the stereotypical storylines, but it wasn't really stereotypical if you're from Humboldt Park, Logan Square, Cicero.
That's right.
It's not stereotypical, and I looked at it like a showcase. I really never looked at it as, wow, they're making us look pretty bad, because to me, Chicago Boricua was one of those movies, and it's you and Amy Garcia and Ramses Jimenez who broke out of there, and a movie like that, I thought, was doing really positive things for the culture. Storylines were the storylines, but then again, there were the grandpas playing dominoes, so nobody's complaining about that.
Right, and you know what? There were a certain amount of people who really were inspired by this film. To this day, I have young girls reaching out to me on Instagram or Twitter and saying, you really were an inspiration to me. I've seen you and I've watched you throughout your career and the different moves that you make, and I just want to tell you that you've made an impression on my life. And when I hear things like that, to me, it's worth it. I don't really care about negativity or negative things that people say. I grew up with that. Like I said, I'm from Humboldt Park.
well, people who are not from here may not completely understand how important the pageant is in our community. And there's two pageants, it's the girls, it's the little girls, it's the teenage girls, it's the older girls, and in the last few years, they've had a transgender pageant that is just as huge. Chicago, I think, has always done a really good job of exposing, the Latinos, the Latinas here, with the 26th Street and Cicero and Division Street, and maybe those on the outside just don't see it that way, or they look at us as, well, we're segregating everybody.
Well, I think that it's in human nature. If you look at just the way that things are in the world, it's, east side, west side, hub, stop. It's never people trying to find unity. Unfortunately, people always try to find a reason to be separate, and whether it's, unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorant people in the world who base it off the melanin levels in your skin, or, whether or not you're rich or poor. So,
well, I think too, people need to realize that the movies, what is it? It's got to be almost 15 years old now.
Yeah, almost.
And it was a movie that needed to be made, and probably amongst the reasons that it was made is that no one else would have made it. It's a Chicago film. It's Chicago Latinos. It's people who knew each other and decided we're going to jump into this together, whether we're getting.
That's an interesting story. It wasn't like that.
Oh no.
Actually, no. It was actually directed and produced by some professors at Columbia College. Marisol Torres.
Right, Chicago.
In Chicago. And the executive producer of Chicago Boricua was Richard Schwerin, who was the co-executive producer of Law and Order.
That I did not know.
Yes. So Marisol Torres, I believe, is Jewish Puerto Rican, and they decided, she wrote the film, and it was her take to the community. And I remember hearing about the audition. And at first, I hadn't been invited to the auditions, but I had heard about them. A lot of my girlfriends had been auditioning, and it's funny. Sometimes actresses, they don't want to tell the other actresses where the auditions are, because they're afraid if you find out, you might get the role and they might not. So at first, I was hearing about the auditions, and I had been involved in a play at the Ballywick on Belmont called Latino Log. And I think at the time it was being produced by Elena Sotomayor, and they wanted her to audition for the movie, but she was busy. She travels the world with her husband, and they do a lot of good work in Santo Domingo. And I don't know what she was doing at the time, but for some reason she called me up, and she was like, "Hey, Christina, did you hear about the Chicago Boricua audition?" She said, "Well, I just wanted to let you know, some of the producers are going to come and watch the show. So, just a heads up." Well, after the show, they gave her a call, and they wanted me to come in and audition for Chicago Boricua. Now, this is after they auditioned hundreds of girls in Chicago, all girls at Columbia College, and all my friends I told you had auditioned for it, but nobody was really saying where the auditions were. And I went in the very last week that they were holding auditions, and I read for both roles, my role, Tata, and Amy Garcia's role. And I really felt closer and connected to the role of Tata because my own story was one that I grew up in a private school. And even though I grew up right across the street from Humboldt Park, there was a disconnection. And when I tried to integrate into the neighborhood, I wasn't received kindly.
No way.
Well, at first people would tease me all the time and say, you sound white. You sound so white. Can we come to your house for crumpets and tea? And that used to hurt my feelings. I used to feel rejected amongst, the community. And at that point, I think at a certain point, I was a teenager, so I tried to blend in. So I adapted more of the neighborhood accent, I think, at the time. But that happens to me when I go to New York. So I started to not feel ashamed of speaking properly because it wasn't accepted by my peers in the community. So my mother says to me one day, "You don't sound white, you sound right." And I thought it was just an interesting thing. So when I told that story at the audition, they started laughing, and I think it was one other thing that I did in the audition, and they called me the very next day. I was praying all day at work. I said, "Lord, if it's in your will, I really, really want to play Tata. I know I auditioned for both roles, but I really, really want to play Tata. So if it's in your will, Lord, please, I understand. If it's not." And about a half an hour after I stopped praying, the phone rang. And it was that they wanted to offer me the role of Tata.
Wow, and that is just one of many stories. My name is Harv Roman. That is Christina De Leon. She is an actress. She is a model. She is an advocate. She is a positive force. She's an incredible mom to an incredible baller out on the West Coast. And this is just an interview tease. 15 minutes or so, 2 segments, just for you to get a feel of what the full-length interview with Christina De Leon is going to be like. So my thanks to you, the listener, for putting up with me, the DJ, on this YouTube version of my celebrity hotline conversation with Chicago's very own Christina De Leon, who's now on the West Coast. Of course, the music throughout that you've been listening in the background has been Tony Boom Boom Bedell with another exciting freestyle mega mix. So we'll finish off with that, and then keep watching my Facebook and checking my YouTube and my Mixcloud full length Christina De Leon very, very soon.